I'm Dennis. I was born 1928, Sheffield. Always been my hometown, always been a Yorkshireman. I've loved Sheffield all my life. I remember the war, that one thing, well, I think it made my dad laugh. It was on 3rd of September when war started. And I were at a schoolmates of mine. And there was a speech. And everybody had supposed to listen to the radio because it was Neville Chamberlain telling us that we were now at war with Germany. And I immediately left my mates and went home. And they said to me, Mum and Dad, have you heard? He says, well, yeah. I said, well, what you come running home for? I says, well, I thought if the air raids were going to start immediately, I didn't want to die in anybody else's house. And I always remember saying that, as though they were coming to come immediately. Well, I suppose that's how you think as a kid, innit? Lived most of my time as a school lad in Sheffield, and most of that time was spent during the war.
Did the war affect your schooling?
Yes. The schools were closed. They closed them because they were full of bunks, beds, bedding, emergency stuff, ARP posts. So we had, at the beginning, home service they called it, and various people in the district let out the front rooms, so probably 2 or 3 afternoons a week or mornings, whatever. We had this timetable to attend Mrs. So-and-so's front room where we had his lessons, etc. So at that time, you were going around people's houses and homes doing your schooling. That went on for quite a while until they got some semblance of order back into it. And then we all started going to school again. But during the time we were messing about like that, a lot of us lads got jobs. I was working for a baker at the top of my mum's road, taking his bread out to different places on the old bicycle with the basket on the front. And I always remember one day, Wednesdays it was, I used to really enjoy it because he used to take all these tins of gravy, big tins, and pies, and there was a forge in Loxley Bottom, and I used to sell pies and peas with gravy to the blokes in the rolling mill, which was an education for me because I'd never been in a steel mill in my life, and now those blokes worked in those days. I don't know how they lived the day through, because how they dodged them billets of steel when they come through them rollers, they were absolutely terrific. But as long as they kept buying the pies and peas, my boss would buy, but you were alright, you were happy. It was an experience. Everything was an experience when you're a kid. You've got something to remember.
What did your mum and dad do?
My dad was a stonemason. His dad was a stonemason. His grandfather was a stonemason. He worked all the war. He didn't do a lot of stonemasoning during the war, but he did a hell of a lot of maintenance work in Stocksbridge at Sammy Fox's, which was part of British Steel Corporation. So he was continuously employed. My mother, like a lot of ladies didn't seem to work before the war. Very few, only when they were single. But they all sent to go out and went and got a job somewhere. When the war broke out, everybody wanted to work. My mum only went cleaning, but at least she went out working. And people they started working. Your whole life changed. Your mother changed. Your mother started wearing trousers. You'd never seen your mother in trousers before. But everybody started wearing trousers, and my dad used to work long hours. He enjoyed his work, and sometimes it was 7, 8 o'clock at night before he came home. But we always had a good dinner. There was always a good meal. There was always the baking, smelling on a Thursday, everything. We didn't starve. In fact, I think the food was a lot. Everybody was a lot healthier. There were no packeted ruddy teas and dinners and what have you. It all came out of a pot.
Your father served in the First World War.
Yeah.
What did your father do there?
Well, I asked him about his war, and like a lot of old soldiers, he never said a lot. But he did say that when war broke out in 1940, not 19, yeah, he said everybody wanted to go to war because it was the thing to do, to go and serve your country. So you got all these posters facing you, your country needs you and all that. So he said, along with a few mates, he went to volunteer, because most of them were volunteers anyway at the beginning of war. And he said he volunteered, but there were even a snag and a catch to that, because they said to them at the time, you're signing on for the duration of the war and 6 reserve. He says, no, we're not. He says, we're serving for the duration of the war. So he said there were a lot of young men didn't sign immediately, but just after war had started, when this mass hysteria died down and they stopped volunteering as fast, they changed their attitude, he said, and you could get in just for the duration of the war. So in he went. And I think in his past he'd done a bit of first aiding. So he joined around the medical corps. I know he went in France, I know he served in France, and he didn't say much about that either. He said he usually don't want to know. And he eventually had to come home because he was suffering from varicose veins badly caused by, they used to wear puttees, their trousers were tight. And while we were in hospital, he said, I saw that they were needing soldiers to volunteer quickly for Germany, East Africa, because a lot of people never thought there were a war going on in East Africa, which they were, like they were in Gallipoli and places like that. So he says, I thought, well, I'm going to have a work this Africa thing. So he went to Africa to fight in their war and spent the rest of his life there, because the Germans had exploited Germany, East Africa, just like they started to exploit everything else. And he spent the rest of his time in there. When he came back, they went back to his stonemasonry, and he was still chopping stones and carving bits and pieces out when he didn't retire while he was 70, because he didn't want